Hello and welcome. This is The Big Question on NDTV Profit. I'm Vikram Boza, and tonight we have two critical debates that in many ways reflect a larger shift in how work itself is being reshaped. From Silicon Valley to Indian city streets, there are different worlds, but they're driven by the same pressures of disruption, cost pressures, and uncertainty. So let's bring up the first debate. It is to do with big tech, mass layoffs, AI disruption, and a 60-day visa clock that is putting thousands of Indian tech professionals under pressure. That's debate number one. And then we come back home with auto and taxi unions on strike in Delhi NCR. After the delivery partners of quick commerce, they went on a protest. Now we're turning towards the other gig workers. It makes us question if the rising fuel costs and the shrinking earnings are crushing India's gig workers. We'll get to that in just a bit. But first, let's bring up debate number one. What's unfolding in the United States? Because this is no longer just about layoffs. It is about the stability of an entire talent model which is built on the American dream. Even as Meta has slashed 8,000 jobs, which is nearly 10% of its workforce, it has committed more than $125 billion towards building AI infrastructure. So what's happening there? Roles are being frozen, teams are getting restructured, and thousands are being pushed into AI-linked functions. But for those Indian professionals on H-1B visas, this is not just corporate restructuring that is happening. It is actually a countdown. There is a 60-day clock, which begins the moment you lose your job. You have to find a new sponsor, and if you don't, then you have to leave the country. And this is part of a much larger trend. Nearly 92,000 tech jobs have been cut globally. This has happened in 2026 alone. Talk about Amazon, you talk about Oracle. Flooding the market with experienced talent now. It's definitely about weakening their bargaining power. And it's shifting hiring decisively towards AI-driven roles. So this is no longer just about one company or one cycle. It raises certain fundamental questions. Is this going to be a temporary slowdown, or is it going to be a more structural reset in global tech employment? And when it comes to H-1B, that entire model of H-1B, is it increasingly turning into a system of uncertainty for Indian talent? And now we're talking about AI, accelerating white-collar disruption faster than expected. Is it time for Indian talent to rethink its dependence on Silicon Valley and for India to build stronger opportunities at home? Which is the big question tonight. And here we are talking about Meta and Amazon layoffs. But like I said, we're talking about major layoffs taking place, and perhaps more will follow. But what about the American dream? What about that H-1B model? Is it really failing Indian talent? We have our panel to take this question to. Let me introduce you to them. Let's bring in Mr. Ganesh Natarajan, Chairman of GTT Data Solutions, Honeywell Automation, 5F World, the former Chairman of NASSCOM, joining us from Mumbai. And also from the capital, we have Dinesh Jotwani, founder of Jotwani Associates, a legal firm that he set up after he gave up life in the US. Good evening to both of you, gentlemen. Mr. Natarajan, I was just telling our viewers, nearly 92,000 tech jobs already gone globally in 2026. So you see this as a cyclical correction, or are we looking at a more structural reset when you talk about hiring in global tech?
Well, it's certainly a structural reset for the simple reason that AI is going to eat up a lot of jobs. All the traditional jobs in terms of coding and testing and migration will get taken away. And to your point, I don't think it's America specific. America is, of course, the largest employer of tech talent, but it's going to happen whether it's in Europe or China or in India. You will need less tech talent. I mean, and again, it's not an H-1B specific issue. It is just that if you're in tech, you better be very, very careful and very capable of handling AI. Otherwise, your job is in danger.
But for an H-1B worker, Mr. Natarajan, someone who loses their job, the law is very blunt in the US. So specifically about the US, 60 days to find a new sponsor or leave the United States. In today's hiring environment, is that timeline realistic, or do you think it's simply unfair?
No, it's going to be tough. I mean, I wouldn't say unfair because that is the law of the land. And there is a general move against immigration, as you know, in the US.
Yes.
So Indians who are going there on an H-1B will have to take their chances because even green card processing is very, very slow at this point of time in the US. So if you're clear that you want to be in the US and want to live the American dream, then you have to be very good at what you do. And yes, if you do lose your job, then that is the 60 days. It's been 60 days right through. It's not a new change. But I think that's a problem. I mean, it's an occupational hazard of saying that I'm going to leave my relatively safe country and go and work abroad. Because there is a challenge of not being permanent, not being able to claim citizenship. All those are there.
What do you say to this, what Mr. Natarajan is saying? It is a job hazard. Do you see it that way? These layoffs, they do expose a core vulnerability. Your visa is tied to your employer. So has the H-1B model become fundamentally risky for Indian professionals, Mr. Jotwani?
So what has recently happened is they had increased the fees of H-1B.
Yes.
The companies are now paying $100,000 at least for an employee. And recently there was an H-1B lottery where the companies like Meta and Amazon who have taken this step, they have spent that much amount of money on newly issued H-1B visa. So my take is that this H-1B that the slashing of H-1B jobs, which is 16 in both the companies could be around 16,000 workers, will massively impact the workers which were there earlier. Maybe they were in H-1B from last 2 to 3 years, and perhaps you're right. Their role might have been something to do with development, QA, or management, which is what the AI is going to take. Okay, so the freshly issued H-1B to the Indian students or Indian employees that has happened is they might be continuing because company has already spent like $100,000. They wouldn't like to let them go to another company. But the middle level, and this is what AI is also going to impact. AI is going to impact the middle level workers,
yes,
because they don't want the QA or the development function, which can be easily done by AI with the younger generation, much more familiar with using AI tools. So it is going to be really a challenging phase for the students. I do understand for the employees who are on H-1B, they have now 60 days notice. They either have to, get a new employer,
yes,
which is not easy right now, or they, I've heard students already hearing students, can I apply for a student visa again? So they might come to the student visa. There is called F1 visa. So what they're saying, can we get F1 visa now again? Where there's a challenge in their admissions again to take higher studies.
yes.
But yes, many students have either they take B2, which is multiple business visa, or F1, or come back to the country. So this is a big challenge for students who are there. It's a panicking situation that is happening.
Yes.
But I would advise the employees to wait a bit. They have 60 days to see. They might change the role, so they might.
So there is a possibility, but legally you have to follow the law of the land. And 60 days, immigration expert Kathleen Deroser is also joining us from New Delhi. Kathleen, you tell us, when thousands are laid off at once, the market gets flooded with similar talent. Like Mr. Jotwani is saying, some of that talent is looking for, the education route to be able to stay on in the US and beat the law, as it were. Because if you don't find a sponsor in 60 days, then you have to leave the country. But does that make the 60-day rule even more punitive in practice? What do you say?
I actually think this finding another employer and who is willing to transfer and sponsor the H-1B is actually I would call it an immigration emergency, because people, those are only focusing on one route, which is only H-1B, and then layoffs are around the world. It's just not happening in America. It's even happening in our country as well. So what I suggest people that only looking forward to a work permit or a working visa, it's not visible.
Right.
I always recommend my clients and people, those who come for consultancy, that, if you really wanted to move abroad, look at something which is going to be a long term. For example, we have Canada permanent residency. You have all the rights in the country, and after 3 years, you can even apply for citizenship as well. And if you don't want to, you don't wish to, you can keep your permanent residency alive. You can keep reactivating it after every 5 years.
Right.
Similarly, you have Australia, and now Germany is opening door. So I always suggest people not to only focus on one route, which is H-1B, and then you are uncertain about what is going to happen post.
So diversification is what you're suggesting, Mr. Natarajan. Do you concur? The companies, they're not just cutting jobs, sir. They're freezing 6,000 roles and shifting 7,000 people into AI functions. So is that where the future hiring is going to be concentrated?
No, not at all. I mean, if you go to Australia, you will become a bartender. I mean, you go to Canada, you'll have a nice life, but at the end of the day, that's not where the capital of technology lies. So if you're confident, you're a bright candidate, definitely America will continue to be the place of choice. And yes, there is a risk. I mean, there's no question about that. But I'm just saying that it's not, I mean, I know your story is making it out as though the H-1Bs are being targeted.
Yeah.
But people are being laid off as citizens, green card holders, L1s being placed by technology companies and H-1Bs. So there is a risk. And I mean, in a layoff situation, I mean, you are maybe, as you said in your story,
yes,
you get a mail at 4 a.m. in the morning, or you're told at 2 p.m. in the afternoon, and you're marched out at 5 p.m. That is the unfortunate reality of the US. But that is where innovation is happening, particularly Silicon Valley. So I would hate to say that, look, forget about Silicon Valley and go and do a nice job in Melbourne. That's not going to last either.
Yes. So indeed. And Kathleen, perhaps you can come with a rebuttal, because these layoffs that we talk about, they don't just impact jobs, they impact families, they impact healthcare, schooling, dependent visas. So has the system failed to account for the human cost of this entire kind of layoff scenario that we have right now?
It has. So if I talk about the emotional, impact is actually massive. We are not talking about the fresh graduates alone. Many of those professionals have children studying in the US. Their ongoing home loans and spouses are on dependent visa. The green card applications are pending for years. So for many Indians, the US immigration system creates a lot of hindrance when it comes to a long-term journey and settling down abroad. So that is the reason, as an immigration consultant, we give them all the kind of possible, feasible ideas and options to think about it first and have all those buckets available. So you don't save your eggs only in one bucket, but you kind of
But like Mr. Jotwani was saying, there is greater scrutiny. Of course, there are the visa switches that they would be angling for, B1, B2, as a stopgap arrangement. But the exit routes for H-1B workers is getting narrower. There's no taking away from that. In fact, Mr. Jotwani, I'm wondering if the companies are effectively using the H-1B system when they require the talent, but then they're shedding that responsibility when it comes to the downturns. What do you say?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Companies, they're called FANG, Facebook, Amazon, Netflix, and Google. They're called FANG companies. They have, when the talent was required in USA, they sponsored H-1B students and employees. And now when it comes to a situation when they don't need them, I will say, maybe because of the advent of AI or so it's basically a business for them. Okay, it's not like India where you may consider an employee also maybe try to place him on some other role, maybe try to train them in AI.
Yes.
But here we have a specific role. This employee was hired for this particular role. He will continue to do it. And if his job is taken away by AI process, there is no mercy on that.
There is no mercy. It's quite clear.
No mercy.
Yes. Yeah. Mr. Natarajan, then, is Silicon Valley still that gold standard, or has the risk-reward equation shifted enough for Indian talent to rethink that American dream at least?
See, the gold standard is now Silicon Valley and China. The reality is that no Indian will want to go to China at this point of time. And that is true even for healthcare, for instance. I mean, my daughter is a cancer scientist in Sloan Kettering Hospital in New York, and she gets wooed by Singapore, by Dubai, by China, by everybody else. But the land of opportunity is still America, whether we like it or not. Europe is, to my mind, is not an alternative at all at this point of time, given the state of the economies of most of those countries. So given that, absolutely, the standard of innovation is Silicon Valley. The opportunity is not just Silicon Valley, but across the US, where there are significant opportunities in Boston and Raleigh and so many other places. So I don't think you can wish away America. America does operate on on a hire and fire kind of methodology. But as Mr. Munwani is saying, that having paid $120,000 to get a person on H-1B, you won't lay him off in a hurry. But if there is a major 16,000 cut, yes, a few H-1Bs will also lose their job. So I think it's an occupational hazard. People have to be aware of what they're getting into. As the immigration expert rightly said, you have to weigh all the options, and then you may still choose the US, but be aware of the risks that you take when you make that jump.
Well, what we are clearly hearing and seeing tonight is that this is no longer just about layoffs. It's about a system where opportunity comes. It comes with fragility. And the H-1B dream still opens doors, and America is still that dream, like Mr. Natarajan is saying, but those doors can shut. They can shut just as quickly, and that's a risk that India's brightest talent can no longer ignore. I want to thank my guests for joining us, Ganesh Natarajan, Kathleen Deroser, and Dinesh Jotwani. Thank you for joining us with your insights on the big question.